Breakwater Capital. And so we have Jeff on the call, we have our newest partner, Tom, on the call as well, and our esteemed guests, Dr. Kevin and Melissa. So we're really excited to have them on today. We're also very excited to talk about the power of movement, especially as we age. You know, we all know it's never too late to embrace a more active and fit lifestyle, and science shows us that movement is important to help bone density and maintain joint flexibility. It also positively impacts cognitive function, gives us those feel-good endorphins, helps us maintain independence, may provide social and also provide social interaction through fitness classes, and improves our sleep quality, which we all probably could use a little bit more of. And like I said in the beginning, we're joined today by Dr. Kevin DeGroot and Melissa Schreier to share more about these topics. Is certainly, you know, Tom, Jeff, and I are not subject matter experts in this area. So Dr. Kevin joins us today, and he's a physical therapist. He started T0 Physio with the hope of preventing the unnecessary surgeries and reactionary healthcare he had been seeing elsewhere. Many clients that came to his PT practice prior to surgery were there with the assumption that it was just to prove to insurance that surgery was necessary. Those that did believe they could get better believed that the best they could hope for 90% of where they were before. Kevin works with people early on following their injuries to be proactive, not only to get back to where they were before, but provide them with training tools and strategies to work towards their true potential. He is a former college athlete, avid runner, and triathlete. Kevin understands how important movement is for mental health, improving quality of life. His primary focus is putting all the pieces of movement together and focusing on how much each part of the body works together collaboratively. He doesn't just focus on one area of the body and treating pain, but focuses on understanding the full story so that people can move more efficiently throughout life.
I don't know if I've ever actually had somebody read that.
I wish I got such a nice formal introduction when Maddie kicks off our market calls. But no, Kevin, we're so happy to have you here. Before I introduce our second guest, Melissa, here, just want to thank everyone for taking the time. I was absolutely positive today was going to be breaking the streak. I think we've done like 9 webinars this year, and it's been like a beautiful day every day. It's like thunderstorms, crappy, and as you see behind me, the sky is cleared. So thank you again for giving us some time this morning or afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. Obviously, we know it's the Labor Day weekend here, and people have busy social calendars, but again, thanks so much for joining us. As I think about personally this time of year, it's kind of where we start letting our guard down. The bathing suits are going to get put away shortly. We'll start binging on candy and Halloween time, and just the carb loads that happen as the weather gets cooler in the Northeast and the Midwest. The idea of having a conversation about our wellness in a physical sense, right? We've had some conversations about behavioral finance. We've talked about nutrition and whatnot. Is really in our mind about just rounding out wellness. So we're excited again to have an opportunity to share some time with you with these two folks. It's not all bad news. Right, I know in the 50s, we talk about losing something like 20% of our body mass or bone density or whatever it was in the title there. There was a good article in the journal this week that you make your peak financial decisions in your early 50s. So 50s are good. And Tom and I are fast approaching those. So we have something to look forward to, even though that 5 in front of our number is not something that we're usually excited about. So without further ado, let me introduce our second guest, Melissa, who is a registered nurse by training, spent a good portion of her early career in the ICU dealing with cardiothoracic care, anesthesia, neurosurgical work, as well as cardiology. She's an ISSA certified professional fitness instructor, right? So she really is able to take you from probably that soft body that you're in today into a more physically fit character, and at the same time, really along with that comes the mental wellness that we really aspire to have. We'll have an opportunity to, at the end of the discussion, open up some questions to both Kevin and Melissa, we would ask that we try to keep that stuff general that would appeal to a broader audience. And we will surely share their contact information should you want to have a conversation with them offline. This will be recorded, so you have capacity to go back and review this, as well as feel free to share this content with friends or family members or people who would benefit from this. So, Maddie, I'll turn it back over to you if you have any other things you want to speak to. Otherwise, we'll dive in. And again, thanks guys for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah, so we'll start with Dr. Kevin here. Dr. Kevin, we do have some slides to share here, but while I'm in the process of bringing that up, can you tell us about T0 Physio and why you decided to start it?
Yeah, so make sure that my mic is on. First of all, thank you for having me. It's always fun to get to have conversations about health and wellness and the difficulties of our system. Maddie and I are a part of a BNI group together, and I got to present a couple weeks ago on why we, as a practice, went away from the insurance model, and really what it came down to is there's a lot of our healthcare system that is not about your health; it's about treating sickness. And I'm sure that Melissa would say the same thing. It's much better to be proactive about treating your health than it is to be reactive. There's so many things that, if we wait till down the road, they just become bigger problems and more complicated to solve. And this is a financial advising group, and I think it's akin to if you wait until you're in your 70s to start thinking about what, let's say that you wait till you're 60 to think about what retirement looks like. You're not going to be very well prepared once you turn 65 because you just don't have that much time. But if you start early and you store health in the bank, you're going to be in a lot better position. And so that's kind of part of what I want to talk about. But really my experience was that I was seeing clients every 15 minutes. In my practice, I saw 130 people on average every week. And it was just, I honestly couldn't remember what people's names were. I couldn't remember what they were coming for. I couldn't remember much of anything about what was going on. And it was just, it wasn't good care. It wasn't good quality care. And I was left with this frustration of, well, this is the way that insurance dictates the way that we have to do things. And I could continue to do it through their model and continue to see more and more and more and more and more people and productivity expectations and requirements. Or I could realize that there are people out there who want higher quality care, who value their health and want to invest in themselves. And so I started my practice in 2016. And have since grown to, we have 6 therapists on staff. I've worked with athletes all around the world. So whether you're in Colorado or, I know there's people in Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, New Hampshire, there's all over the place. If you want somebody to just pick their brain, I'm happy to help. So if we want to get in a little bit, the first and probably most important thing that I will say today is all of us have fear, but it's irresponsible of me, in my opinion, to invoke fear in you. And so it's really hard for me to come on and talk about health and wellness and talk about the urgency that we have and not talk about it in a way that you walk away and you're like, oh man, I'm scared. I'm more afraid now than I was before I got on the call with Kevin. And I want you to hear that that's not my intention. That's not my focus. I don't want you to walk away, as so many people have experienced, where they go to the doctor and they're like, oh man, I've never seen somebody who has a back as bad as yours. And all you're left with is this feeling of frustration and fear that like no one else can understand what you're going through. And now you're more sore, you're more in pain, you're more frustrated, you're more fearful. And so what I want you guys to hear is I understand that you all have fears associated with aging. That's natural. You have fears associated with what does it look like when you get to 85 years old, and where are you going to be at that point? Are you going to be able to have your independence? I understand that you have fears associated with the knee pain that you have as a 35-year-old, and you wonder what it's going to look like when you're 65. And that's understandable, and that's normal to have fear. But I don't want you to walk away from this and say like, oh man, Kevin put the fear of God in me, that if I don't do something now, I'm going to be messed up. So let me walk you through the process that we typically have, and why I think that this process matters, and why I think you guys should be approaching your kind of physical therapy aches and pains journey this way. And so we take a 4-step approach in the way that we do things. Number one is helping with symptom reduction. I always say that a body that feels better moves better. I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but you take some Advil and you're like, oh yeah, my neck doesn't hurt anymore. And so your range of motion improves. That's normal, because all of a sudden your pain goes down. So the overall perception of how you have to protect yourself decreases. And so we almost always start with symptom reduction in our practice, and we help people feel better. I want you to actually notice that you are feeling better. But if we stop there, which is where a lot of people stop, right? You watch documentaries about the opioid crisis, and that's where they stopped, is at symptom reduction. All they cared about was getting you out of pain, but they didn't care what that did to you. Or different healthcare professionals, and the models that they have is you walk in, you feel a little bit better afterwards, and then it's come back in 2 weeks and start this whole thing over again. And that is a part of it. We want you to feel better, but we have to move into number 2, which is efficiency of movement. So retraining, almost everything that we do movement wise is based off of habit. So if you look at the way that you move, the way that you walk, the way that you run, the way that you get up from a chair, all of those things are instinctual and habitual. And if we're doing them in an inefficient way, it's impossible for me to say, just make it better. I don't know, this is a good example, but how many of you had, I'm 34. I had to think about that for a second. I'm 34, almost 35. And I had, my grandma tell me when I was a kid, like, straighten up, otherwise you're going to end up in that position. And so a lot of us have that, that grandma who tells us have better posture. But how many of you have ever tried to fix your posture by just stiffening up your back and saying, I'm just going to sit in this position? And then what happens in 5 minutes is you get really tired and you fall back and you're right back to where you were before, if not maybe a little worse, because now your body's absolutely exhausted from trying to fight your habit. So when we look at things like posture and movement, we cannot just tell you to, tighten up your boots and go as, and just hold your back as hard as you possibly can, because that's not how movement works. Movement is habitual, and your body is doing it because your body is in that position because it feels the least threatened. And that's where people like Melissa and myself are there to help you fix the patterns, fix the habits that you have, so that it becomes more natural to do it the efficient way as opposed to the less efficient way. So then we move into the big 5, and this is probably where most of you want to spend a lot of your time, unless you have aches and pains. Everything is broken up into 5 major components of resiliency, and everybody talks about how important it is to be strong and to improve your overall strength, but they forget that there are really 4 other components of resiliency, which are power, balance, endurance, mobility, and mobility. I don't normally do them in that order. So strength, power, mobility, endurance, and balance are the big 5 that you need in order to be as resilient as possible. And so you think about the different aging processes that we go through, and if all I told you to do was go and strengthen, you're not actually helping yourself. It'd be like investing in one thing and one thing only, when your investment portfolio should have a variety of different things, right? You have to invest in all 5 of these, otherwise you're much more exposed. So most of you know what strength looks like, but what does it look like to have power? Power, I was an engineering major before I became a physical therapist, and power has a time component of strength. And so for those of you who do everything slow, you're not actually improving your power, and things like osteoporosis, osteopenia, require that you have more force through your body and more dynamic, powerful movements to help you improve your bone density. So a lot of people think that one way of doing things is best, but it's really not actually helping because you're not treating it the right way. So that's power. Mobility is the ability to get into the positions that you need for the movements. It's like you can go swing a golf club, but you can only have 50% of the range that you need. Well, we can help you with improving mobility to improve your golf swing. Balance and control is the ability to be efficient in that movement and be focused on the direction that it's supposed to go. So again, going to the golf analogy, if you are swinging a golf club and you're falling off balance every time you swing, that's not good for your back. That's not good for your knees. You're going to end up with, possibly other problems. And then endurance is the ability to do things over the course of time. And a lot of times people think of endurance purely as, long, slow running. And that's not it either, right? So again, I love working with golfers. And if you're really comfortable swinging a golf club for 9 holes, but you can't swing a golf club for 18 holes, that's where endurance comes in. And we need to actually have something that's focused to help you improve the ability over the course of time to continue to swing a golf club. So look at those 5 things. And if all you're doing for exercise is band work at home, we're going to end up in a pickle, because that's only focusing generally on the strength side. And if you want to look at what a healthy, again, this investment portfolio, if you want to look at what a healthy investment portfolio is for your physical fitness, you have to have all 5 of those things. And then what Melissa's going to talk about, some with nutrition and hormones and all of those other things contribute. But these are the 5 movement-based things that you need. And then what we help people with is chaos. So the world is chaotic. The world is ever-changing and dynamic. And a lot of times people think to themselves, like, I just have to control all these variables and be able to function within one really tight way of doing things. And that's not the way that the world is. And I often tell people, think about all the different surfaces that you've walked on just today. So I walked on hardwood floors, I walked on concrete, I walked with shoes, without shoes, I walked on turf, I walked on grass. All of those different things are chaotic, and we often look at the world as like, oh, well, we're just going to control it by wearing orthotics, or we're going to control it by having the right type of shoes or the right type of movement, and we're so rigid and we're not robots. And so what I say is true health, true physical readiness is when you can handle the chaos that the world throws at you. So if that's what you're looking for, is to be able to handle chaos, again, we're happy to chat. But then moving on to the next slide, and make sure that I'm going quick enough. So causes of decreased mobility. This is something that is a common misconception. And a lot of people have the feeling of, my hamstrings are tight or my back is tight, I just need to stretch more. And what most people end up feeling is that, yeah, they feel a little bit better for 10, 15 minutes after they stretch, and then they just go straight back to being tight again. And so here's 6 different examples of reasons that you might have decreased mobility. One is the aging process. As we age, the elasticity of our muscles decreases. So if you're losing some of the flexibility that you have, you're going to experience that as you age. That is normal. But good news is it's not nearly as quick as what most people think. A lot of times they're like, oh, I turned 45 and everything just fell apart. Or I turned 55 and everything just fell apart and my mobility just decreased overnight. That's not how it works. And most of the time it actually goes into number 2, which is decreased activity. As we age, we often decrease how much we're moving. And if we don't use it, we lose it. So it's really important for us to look and say, I need to have as much activity as possible for as long as possible, because if I'm not using it, I'm going to be losing it. The next thing is weight. And there's so many different reasons that this can contribute, whether it's like just extra, I'll say adipose tissue, because that's nicer to say it that way, but more fat, more girth makes it harder for people to move. Number 4 is injury and pain. Your body is there to protect itself. So if you have any aches and pains or injury, you're going to have decreased mobility. Number 5 is health conditions. There's so many different ones that I'm not going to get into, but there are so many different conditions, rheumatoid arthritis, osteoarthritis, et cetera, that can contribute to decreased mobility. And then the last one is one that people don't think about, but it's loss of muscle mass and also the amount of strength that you have. One of your body's, because of this injury and pain and protection, if your body doesn't feel like it can control the movement, if you're not strong enough, it will just tighten up and say, yeah, I'm not going to let you get into that position. So for the vast majority of you, if your back's tight or if your hamstrings are tight, because those are 2 very common things, it's probably because you're not strong enough in your hamstrings, and strong enough in your back probably has very, very little to do with how much stretching you're doing. So that's where being active, being strong, improving those the mobility over the course of time and keeping it is the most important thing that we can have you do. So I think I'm basically up on time. There's so many things that I could talk about, but I'll leave it at that. And I put my name and my email address in my on my name for the webinar. So if you want to reach out to me, it's Kevin at T0 Physio. I was telling Maddie, I know physical therapists, I think in all 50 states. So every major metropolitan area of the country, I could probably find somebody who's a really good physical therapist for you. And whether you work with T0 or whether you work with a friend of mine, I really don't care. I just care that you guys are getting the help that you actually need. And we can work with people across state lines on some things, but more importantly, if you're just frustrated with the care that you've been given and you want a better recommendation, I'm happy to point you that way.
Kevin, that's great. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We really appreciate it. Melissa.
Yes. So as I think about,
Yeah, sorry, Melissa, we'll kick it off to you next.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Kevin, that was great. I found myself nodding at you the entire time. And there's so much of what you said carries over to what I'm about to talk about. So that was why I was happy to hear that you were going forward. So now that I can build off of everything that you just discussed regarding really every single topic that you covered and how nutrition can help support and work with movement. We will be discussing both, but much like Kevin, he had a different path before he got into physical therapy. I was a surgical ICU nurse, like you just found out, but and I did ICU nursing and emergency nursing, trauma nursing for 15 years before I started realizing that I think I would get a lot more gratification from helping people prevent these types of diseases. And that's how I got into the business that I'm in now. So my goal for today is to help you understand how your body responds and how your body responds to the food that you're eating so that you can use that to fuel your success and use that to your advantage. So the slides are just a little bit different than the ones that I have. So I might just vary a little bit. We'll get to we'll cover all the main things, but I think this is going to be fun. And I'm looking forward to any questions that you may have at the end. So let's get started. So as we're talking about movement, of course we know that exercise is vital to our health and our longevity. But there's also another piece to that puzzle, and that is nutrition. So I really would like to get into that. So how can we remain as healthy as possible for as long as possible and kind of slow down that aging process? And there really are 5 points that I'd like to get to today and really focus on. And then I'm going to go through what those may be. And then then we will break down each one so it's a little bit more clear. So the first one is avoiding or reducing inflammation, which is going to be huge. And I love this topic. This is one of the first topics that I cover with every new client that I have, because a lot of times the symptoms of inflammation are attributed to I'm getting older, or this is just a normal sign of age. And some of them maybe, but some of them, I think you'll be surprised to find out, are not. The second one is controlling hormones. And when we think of hormones, we're not good. I don't think you're thinking about the hormone that I'm going to be talking about, which is insulin. We usually think about estrogen or testosterone. So I'm looking forward to discussing that one with you. The third one is consuming enough protein. You're probably going to be surprised to know that adults over 50 can lose between 10 to 15% of their muscle mass every year. And you can imagine there's a whole host of reasons why that is dangerous, and why that's a problem. But the good news is that there are things that we can do to slow that down for sure, and also build. You can also build at this age. You can always build muscle. It's not like, oh, I'm 50, I'm 60, I'm 70, and I'm very close to 50. So I refuse to believe that it's not possible. It is possible. You can build at any age. And then the fourth one is exercise. So just like Kevin was discussing, there are more components than just stretching and doing basic exercises. We really need to focus on what are the best exercises for not only where you're at, but also for your health and how it's not all just weight loss. We also need to focus on, how we're utilizing food and food as fuel as it pertains to exercise. And we'll get into that as well. And then just to lead into the next one, and it is fuel for your activity. And we're going to get into that. And I don't have this, I'm not going to discuss hydration, but just keep in the back of your mind that hydration is a very important part of this whole wellness. Now, inflammation. This is a topic that I love to discuss. There are two types of inflammation. The first one you're well aware of. You walk into a table or a chair, you bang your knee, the area is swollen, it's red, it's warm. We know that's inflammation. But there's another type of inflammation that you may not be aware of, and that is really a low-level whole body inflammation. And over time, that sets the foundation for serious age-related diseases like heart disease, cancers, neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And the good news here, it's important to know these things because it's important to know you can avoid it. And we're going to discuss that very shortly. So the important question now is how do I know if I have this low-level inflammation? Well, have you ever gotten out of bed or gotten out of your car or off the couch and all of a sudden you feel like your muscles are achy, your joints are stiff, maybe you're getting frequent headaches, maybe you have asthma flare-ups? These are all signs of inflammation. And a lot of times we just attribute that to, I'm getting older, I just have aches and pains. And that may be true. Of course there's arthritis. Of course you may have injury-related residual symptoms. But a lot of times what we're dealing with here is this low-level inflammation. So what causes low-level inflammation? Number one is stress, which we all have to some extent. Number two is a sedentary lifestyle, which we all know has really picked up since COVID. Number three is environmental toxins, but really what most of the time, the common reason for this is our diet. Our diet is very high in manufactured food, refined foods, processed foods, high sugar, high carbohydrate. These things all lead to inflammation. And we often think that when we feel like this, that it's not going to improve. You will be astounded when you give a new way of eating, you cut out certain things, and we're going to discuss how you can avoid this. But the body responds so quickly to change. The minute you give your body what it needs, it will respond in the way that you want. Okay, so how can we improve inflammation? Through diet. And it's not just diet. There's a lot of different ways that we can improve it, but let's discuss nutrition first. So we're going to stop eating refined foods or severely cut back. We're going to cut back on processed foods, manufactured foods. And then next, we're going to include more omega-3 fatty acids. So what these are things like fish, walnuts, flaxseed. And in the same time, we're going to decrease omega-6 fatty acids. These are those fatty acids that we're finding in fast food or snack foods, pastries, baked goods, things like that. So we're going to increase omega-3. We're going to decrease omega-6. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to increase the fruits, the vegetables, fish, legumes, whole grains, and then a tricky one for a lot of people is reducing alcohol, especially during COVID. A lot of people have really picked up alcohol consumption, and I could go into a whole topic on that and why it causes lots of issues, including weight gain. But we'll save that maybe for a different one. Okay, so next topic is also one that I could talk about forever, is controlling hormones. So as we mentioned, or as I mentioned before, the hormones that we typically think of when I say the word are estrogen or testosterone. Some people may think, oh, maybe cortisol, and those are all true. They all certainly have a place, especially for women when we hit menopause, men certainly when we hit that same age. We do have a fluctuation and decrease in estrogen and testosterone, and that does cause lots of issues, including a loss of muscle mass. But we're going to get to muscle mass next. So let me explain this to you. How about, have you ever felt like you were hungry all day long? Like maybe you've just eaten a big meal, and an hour or two later you're starving, or you just feel hungry every day, all day, and as soon as you eat one meal, you're thinking about the next. This is actually due to your hormones, and the two that we're dealing with, well, the one that we're dealing with is insulin in response to your blood sugar. So dealing with this issue is easier than you think, and we're going to talk about that now. So what is insulin? Insulin's a hormone that's produced in your pancreas, and its main role is just to regulate the amount of glucose in your blood. So the way that I think that I can describe this or explain this to you the best is by discussing what I call the glucose insulin roller coaster. So when you eat something like a high carb meal or processed food, or even things that you think may be healthy, I have a lot of clients who will call me, and a lot of new clients will call me, and they'll say, you know, I eat really healthy. I don't understand why I can't lose weight. I don't understand why my joints hurt. Even things like yogurts. And there are yogurts that are going to be beneficial for you. And then there are going to be yogurts like the fruit on the bottom, or the highly processed ones, or the ones with low protein. Protein bars are another culprit. Marketing is amazing for all of these health foods and these protein bars that are supposed to help you, and really they're glorified candy bars. And what they're doing is spiking your blood sugar. So what happens is whenever we eat something like this, our blood sugar goes up. And in response to that, insulin has to come out and regulate that blood sugar. So when it does that, it lowers our blood sugar. And when it lowers our blood sugar, what happens is we end up hypoglycemic. Hypoglycemia means that we have low blood sugar. If you've ever been out and you haven't eaten, or you've just gone long periods without eating, and you feel like you start getting shaky and sweaty and cranky, a lot of people refer to it as hangry. That is actually a symptom of low blood sugar. So now we have low blood sugar, right? So we ate our high carb food, insulin came out, we now have low blood sugar. Now the brain is triggered, because glucose, carbs, are the fuel of your brain. Your brain thinks you're trying to starve it, and it's like, I need more carbohydrates. Now the body is cued to eat more carbohydrates and sugar, and that is what you crave. So if you find yourself like, I need carbs, I love carbs, I want bread, I want cookies, I want crackers, I need something crunchy, this is your body telling you that you have an imbalance in your insulin. So once that happens, is now you're craving carbohydrates and sugar, and what happens is you go to the cupboard and you find, or the pantry, and you find it, and now the whole cycle starts over again. So you are constantly on this roller coaster. And the thing I want you to understand also with insulin, because it is important. So not only does it regulate the blood sugar that we have in our blood, the blood sugar, not only does it regulate our blood sugar, but it is also the hormone responsible for storing body fat. So I'll have people say to me, I eat healthy, I cannot seem to lose weight. And usually one of the reasons why is because they're constantly on this cycle. And the more frequent that you have insulin coming out, remember, insulin is the hormone that stores body fat. So the more insulin surging that we're having, the more body fat that we're storing. So learning to eat in a way that is able to control your blood sugar, thus controlling your insulin production, is really vital. So how can we get off the roller coaster? There's a few different ways that we're going to talk about. And the first one is the timing of your meals. So don't go long periods of time without eating. That will certainly put you on highs and lows of blood sugar that will trigger the cycle as well. Also, you really want to be eating in frequent intervals, and it depends on the person. Some people have medical conditions and they need to decrease the amount of times that they're eating per day, and other people, they need to eat more frequently. Other people are on medication, and we need to be very specific about what time you're eating. But in general, you want to be eating at frequent, steady intervals throughout the day. The next thing I want you to think about to get off of this roller coaster is a combination of food you have with your meals. So we talk about protein, but I also want you to consider healthy fats and carbohydrates, good carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates that will work for you. And being able to combine these foods together and to make balanced meals that are stabilizing your blood sugar opposed to raising your blood sugar is going to help you get off of that roller coaster. The next one is exercise. So getting enough exercise, especially if you can, after you eat, even if it's 15 minutes, that will help lower your blood sugar, and that will help decrease the amount of insulin that's being produced. That will also help the slow down of fat storage. Okay. So, and what do I like for that? I like walking. Walking is great. I mean, strength training, of course, is great, and we're going to get into that and why it's so important. But don't underestimate walking. It's a for a lot of, well, not for a lot of people, for all of us, it's a low intensity exercise. And if you're doing it at certain periods during the day, depending on when you've eaten and what your status is, that is a movement that will utilize body fat for fuel. And we're going to talk about fuel in a second and what your body uses for fuel when you do certain exercises. So just be mindful that that walking should not be taken off the radar. It's a great exercise. Okay, we're moving on to topic number 3, and this is fueling for movement. So we discussed, I think I had mentioned that after the age of 50, we certainly can lose 10 to 15% of our muscle mass each year. So the real question is going to be, well, how do we stop that? How do we slow it down? And how do we start building? And there's multiple ways that we can do that. And protein consumption is going to be one. A lot of times we're so focused on getting quick meals, like we grab a bagel or we grab a sandwich or we grab a pastry or we go to Dunkin' Donuts, and we're really not getting the amount of protein that we need in a day. And we'll discuss how much protein that you should be getting, because that's going to be important information. But protein is at the base of building muscle. So we'll start there. Build a base. We're going to have enough protein. We're going to make sure that we are consuming protein with every single meal. Now, protein not only is it at the base of building muscle, but it also is responsible for helping to regulate your blood sugar. Now, what did we just discuss? We just discussed how blood sugar and insulin is responsible for that roller coaster, and also for fat storage. So protein is going to be vital to your diet. Not only is it responsible for maintaining your blood sugar and controlling insulin levels, but it also plays an essential role in making hormones and antibodies, also detoxifying the liver, and also has a role in thyroid function. I don't know if as we get a little bit older, a lot of times our thyroid starts getting funky. We start gaining weight. They start putting us on medication for thyroid function. And really, once again, we can help to control all of this with nutrition. And our society, it's fast food, it's on the go, Whole Foods take a back seat, and we find ourselves eating pretend food most of the time, and it's a lot easier than you think to be able to put it into practice to have a healthier lifestyle. Okay, so how much protein do we need? There was a study done by Harvard that recommends that we do 1 to 1.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. What the heck is kilogram of body weight? How does that relate to pounds? You can find that number just by dividing your weight in pounds by 2.2. So and you can certainly Google that too. So that's how you know how much protein. And this is for active adults, right? So this is for active adults this is also in combination with strength training. So what do we want to do here? We want to have 1 to 1.3 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight in conjunction with strength training. Get those muscles under tension. So time under tension is going to be crucial for building those muscles. And when we're building these muscles, of course, there's a lot of benefits. You look better, you feel better, but you are also building a foundation of strength, because the older we get, the weaker we tend to get. And if we can build especially a strong foundation, from the ground up, and we can strengthen up those legs and the hips and core, we're going to be much safer the older that we get. Do you ever follow your parent? Like, I know I do. You follow your elderly parents around, hoping that they don't fall because their legs are so unstable. We don't want that to be us. I'm not going out that way. But it does happen. But I feel like now, it's really becoming much more, aware and out there that this is an issue. So let's talk about strength training. It's imperative to build muscle, and getting those, like we just discussed, getting those muscles time under tension. You do not have to be in the gym for an hour at a time. Certainly, you want to be doing the right exercises. Kevin had mentioned, if you're just doing band exercises at home, there's a lot more left undone there. So, getting a trainer, getting somebody who really understands how to help you, and especially whatever age that you're at and where you're starting from, is appropriate. If you're in your 60s and you say, you know what, I'm going to start exercising now, it's very important that you don't go to CrossFit. It's very important that you don't go to someone who doesn't understand where you're starting from, because you're going to need to build a foundation for strength first, and then build from that. And that's going to help you prevent injury. So the other exercise, and I mentioned it a little bit when we were talking about glucose, is walking. Don't underestimate walking. It's probably my top pick, to be honest, right after strength training. It's low impact. Everyone can do this for a longer period of time. You're activating the bigger muscles in your body, and it's time sensitive. You can do it for 15 minutes. You can do it for an hour. Now, lastly, what I want to discuss is to think about how you can fuel your workout. And I just want to take a little look at my notes here, because these are a little bit different than we have up here. When I realized who I was talking to, I changed it up a little bit. But so what I want to discuss first is, we already discussed muscle loss, in adults, but I want you to understand, when you are exercising, whether you are walking, whether you're strength training, whether you're a runner or a cyclist, whether you're a golfer, you need fuel for that activity. What happens is we take the carbohydrates that we eat and we store them as glycogen. It's stored in the muscle, it's stored in the liver. When we need this energy, we draw upon it. But when that glycogen runs out, what are we using for energy now? In some cases, depending on the intensity, we switch over to fat for fuel. But 9 times out of 10, given what our intensity may be, we switch to muscle. So when we use muscle for fuel, essentially we're breaking down the muscle that you have been working so hard to build. This makes you weaker. It makes you, I don't want to say it, fatter, because what's happening is your lean muscle mass is going down, your body fat percentage is going up. So what we need to focus on is what exercise that you're doing, what's the intensity of the exercise that you're doing, so that you understand how your body's going to use fuel and what you need to do to fuel that exercise. And so, I think that when you start an exercise program, or whether you've been in one, consider the goal. The goal is always going to be the first guide to let you know, what should my intensity be? Is it just to build overall health? Is it to build strength? Are you an athlete? And you can be an athlete at any age. Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to just to feel better and get better mobility? Whatever that is, then that was going to give us a good idea of where your nutrition needs to be. And then the only other thing that I'd like to discuss as far as this stuff goes is your macronutrients. So we discussed protein. Again, I don't want to leave out carbohydrates and healthy fats. Those in conjunction is going to give you a nice balanced diet. It's going to give you fuel and energy. It's going to help control blood sugar. It's going to give you more mental clarity. With all of this comes brain fog. And, with age, your doctor will sometimes say, the brain fog, the forgetfulness, it's just your aging. And I don't buy it. I think that your body will respond much quicker when you start fueling it the way that it needs to. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I think that covers it for my time.
Thanks, Melissa. That's great. I
Thanks,
made
Melissa. That was.
I'm sorry.
I
I
think
think
so.
there's a little time lag between Matt and I. We're going to open up to the audience because I know they're going to have some questions or they have some questions. You can see that. I just a few thoughts, right? So, I was reading an article is talking about like VO2, like we think about CO2, but VO2 is how we improve our oxygen levels. Can you give us like maybe knowing an audience that isn't like 25 years old and can run a 5-minute mile? What's like some interval training thoughts for like aging folks, 40s, 50s, 60s, like that's not necessarily like, hey, like I just went to CrossFit and I'm gonna end up in the ER later in the day. Can you guys give some ideas? It's like maybe some stuff that you can do at home, whether it's jumping rope or push-ups and sit-ups, things along those lines.
Who's that for Kevin or I?
Melissa, sorry, I'll have you answer that one.
Oh, well, so are we talking like, so we're talking about a runner?
No, it could be anyone. Just again, like so the idea I run and I do it, quite a bit, but like I don't do a heck of a lot of other types of exercise. So it's like, okay, let's stick with what you're doing well. Here are 3 or 4 other things to fold in there that would make you well-rounded. So it's kind of de facto interval training.
Right. So I work with athletes all the time. And I think a very important thing to consider is what muscles are you using or do you need for that sport or do you need for that activity? So whether you're a runner, you're a skier, you're a golfer, understanding the muscles needed for that particular activity obviously need to be worked on, but there are also muscles that support those muscles and tendons and ligaments. So building an overall routine or program where you have a well-rounded strength training routine that you can not only work the muscles that you're using at the time, but also you're also working complementary muscles as well. Certainly mixing it up and trying different sports, taking a break. Rest is also an extremely important part of excelling at whatever it is that you're doing. So flexibility training is always extremely important, especially when you complete whatever it is that you're working on. But also strength training is always going to be, like, I work with a lot of runners, a lot of marathoners, a lot of triathletes, and I find that a lot of them, especially the novice, they don't realize that they're losing muscle mass. They don't realize that they need to incorporate strength training, and when they do, not only do they feel better, but the performance is better. And also nutrition, good nutrition for any athlete as well.
Thank you. Kevin, maybe I'll throw this one to you. Like, there's and Tom says to me all the time, like Father Time is undefeated, right? Like, so we get that. And so we get thoughtful as we get older, we realize we're not playing pickup basketball. But pickleball has become obviously all the rage today, right? Like, so do you see, like, is there a frequent injury on the pickleball courts, or you see things that you can suggest to people to make sure that they're not spending a ton of time on the table, trainer table with you, fixing rotator cuffs or other things?
Yeah, I think I love that quote. Father Time really is undefeated. Most of the injuries that I see are from a lack of warm up. So people show up to a pickleball court and they just right away start playing, and kind of those muscles on the inside of their thighs are oftentimes the ones as they're bending down to try to hit the ball, or it's kind of the hips and low back are the 2 primary areas that I see these like little niggles from generally not warming up appropriately. So that's a very short answer, but it's like, don't just show up and expect that you're going to be ready to go. It's like anything that you need to actually get there, start a little bit slow, get your heart rate going, get your blood flow going, and then your mobility is going to improve because you've actually gotten blood flow to the area. But if you're just, going and playing pickleball with your friends and you show up and you go play right away, that you're much more likely to get hurt at that point.
And we had a question come in from the audience here, Kevin. This is more directed towards you. But a lot of people go to their physical therapy appointments, and they don't necessarily know, whether or not they need to schedule another one or what success looks like for them. So can you talk us through, when do you really know that you're done, or that you've successfully sort of worked through your injury?
Oh man, you just opened up a can of worms. So the first and foremost is and this is very hard because my practice is different. but we have a plan that we set out for people, and we have a destination that's in mind. So it's not just like, oh, well, come back next week because that's what the script said, but I don't really see that I'm making any progress. Like you should know what progress looks like. And so therefore you should know if it's necessary for you to keep going back because you're either making progress towards the goals that you have or you're not. And if you're not, you go somewhere else. And if you are, you keep going is my recommendation. So if you're normally the heart of that question is somebody saying, I feel like I've plateaued. I'm not really getting any benefit anymore. Do I still go? And my answer to that, because it's not my practice, I would say, no, you don't keep going because that's foolish to keep doing something that you're not seeing benefit from. Unless it's very clearly communicated to you that you are in more of a maintenance-based program, then yeah, you're probably not going to improve as much, but there's reason for you to continue to go because staying consistent with the work that you're doing is keeping you from getting hurt. But those are the two kind of ways to look at it. Is you should expect to be seeing progress on a session by session basis. And if you're not, you should be asking questions of whether you should keep going or if you need to find another provider that is going to help you get better.
Makes sense. Thank you. And Melissa, what are some of the specific services that you offer is another question we had come in.
Yeah, so primarily what I focus on are making customized nutritional plans. And I do this, I work very specifically with every individual. I've never made, I work with clients all over North America, and I've never made two plans the same because no one is the same. No one has the same hormones that they're dealing with at the moment. No one has the same medical conditions, allergies, food aversions, food preferences. So what I do is I create customized nutrition plans that revolve around all of those things. Someone's lifestyle, someone's allergies, like I said, allergies, food aversions. Do they cook? Do they not cook? And I really focus on the health of the client. So we start with where they are, but I work with a wide range. I work with women who are in menopause. I work with older adults. I also work with athletes, professional athletes, college athletes. So I have a lot of different services, but I would say what I do focus on, and I have been focusing on most, in the last few years, are definitely those customized nutrition plans.
And Kevin, last question for you that we have here is there anything, I think this person is asking, is there any stage in life that we should seek out, a physical therapy for specifically that we wouldn't think of otherwise, maybe in more of a preventative way than a reactionary way?
I think it's always helpful to have a conversation. Even again, almost everybody I'm assuming is actually a client of yours. I don't know if this is going to prospects or just clients of the group, but the best time to have a conversation about all of these things is when you're not actively injured or actively sick or actively thinking about retirement. It should be in like, I want to get to know my clients before they're hurt, so I know what baseline looks like. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to sell them on something. It's just, hey, let's get a baseline check. Let's see how you're doing. And that way, if something changes, we know what the baseline comparison is, as opposed to just knowing what your injured state looks like. So I would say always. I'm also biased, and we've gone outside of the medical model in a lot of ways. And similar to Melissa, I work a ton with triathletes, a ton with golfers, a ton with cyclists, runners, and there's always room for progress. And a lot of times people think of like, oh, I'm going to go to a personal trainer to get stronger. And this is just my bias, but I don't think there's a professional that's set up as well as physical therapists to really help with sports performance, because we understand injury, we understand performance, we understand so many different aspects of this. So like there are people who just want to run a faster mile that I work with, and there are people who are actually recovering from an injury that I work with. So that's a longer answer, but the short of it is, if you want a baseline and you just want to stay as healthy as possible, that's a great reason to consult with a physical therapist.
I would say we think the same from a financial perspective too, so certainly can appreciate that. Jeff, any more questions from you or Tom?
No, I think this is great. I mean, again, a really nice way to kind of take us home there. This is in the spirit of optimization, improvement. Nothing's perfect, right? Like, we talk about, how we try to get to a better place, which hopefully we're doing for our clients each and every day. And, that starts at, 6 a.m. when you're getting up and what you put in your body, and then what you absorb throughout the day in terms of information, whether we're watching CNBC or Bloomberg or doing something hopefully a little more exciting. But we do appreciate the time, and we value the feedback, for these sessions and others. We will have a survey coming out here shortly, which we'd really welcome suggestions for future events just like this. But Kevin, thank you for the time. Melissa, again, great to have another New Englander on. Really, hopefully we feel like, or you feel like, we're putting your best interest first and foremost when it comes to your relationship with us here at Breakwater.
Thanks,
Have a great day.
everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.